Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Santa Monica KTC's Thursday night Zoom group Sangha. Thanks, everybody, for being here. We're really pleased to have Lama Kathy with us this evening. She's going to be talking about the book by Mingyur Rinpoche, Joyful Wisdom. So this is our continuing book study group. And let's see. Let's see the news we have. So we have a website, which is santamonicakTC.com. You can log on to our website to find out what's going on our Thursday nights. You can also look at Zampa and you can see what's happening there as well, because we post everything we're doing there. You can become a member if you would like to Santa Monica KTC. If you log on to our website, there are different levels of membership that you can check out. And lastly, if you would like to make a donation towards our dear teacher, Lama Kathy, please do so by following the link in the newsletter that we sent out today as a reminder, our regular newsletter, or on our website. So with that, thank you so much, Lama Kathy, and handing it over to you. And everyone, please, if you would, mute your microphones. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much, Jody, and everybody there at Santa Monica KTC. Happy to be with you this evening. It's doing here what it was probably doing there the other day. It's raining, and and so it's we now have I now have a sound to work with because if you know the book we're studying, Joyful Wisdom, Mingyur Rinpoche's book, he's now in the second half of the book, leading us through series of exercises on how to meditate using different aspects of life, everyday life. And so last time we talked a little bit about objectless attention and attending to form. And then tonight we start on page 151 on the attending to sound. But before we go to that, I'd like to mention that I was really impressed by the Mingyur Rinpoche's ability to talk about how a person rests their attention on something. He starts with this idea of objectless attention, where you're just allowing your mind to rest in the present moment of mind's natural awareness. And then you can place your attention on an object for a short period of time. And then after you have placed your attention on the object for a short period of time, then you let up on the attention and allow the mind to rest again in objectless attention. And so he says something, his description of how to do it means, he says on page 150, he talks about how do you practice this method of letting your attention rest on an object. He says, first, get comfortable with your physical posture, and then allow your mind to rest in objectless attention. And he says, just observe all of your thoughts, your sensations, and so on that come up. Then he says, choose something to look at. Maybe the shape of a person who is sitting in front of you, because he was teaching this in a group. He said maybe on their hair, or the shape of their haircut, or a rose, or your desktop. Just rest your attention, noticing the shape or color, and not making mental comments about it. So that's, to me, that was a really interesting instruction. And then he said you alternate that with the instruction of just letting your mind rest in objectless attention. So on page 151, he talks about this alternation, and I think it's really interesting. He says, whenever I practice using a visual object as a support for resting the mind, I am reminded of one of the earliest lessons I learned from my father. Of course, his father is Tulku Urgyen, one of the great masters of the 20th century. Then Mingyur Rinpoche writes, there is great benefit to be gained from alternating between object-based attention and the sort of objectless attention described earlier. He says, when you rest your mind on an object, you're seeing it as something distinct and separate from yourself. But when we let go and simply rest our minds in the bare attention to the present moment of mind's natural awareness, this experience of being aware of what we see, aware of what we hear, and so on, he said, we begin to realize that whatever we see and however we see it is an image that's made up of thoughts, memories, and limitations conditioned by our sense organs. In other words, there's no difference between what is being seen and the mind that sees it. And so, in other words, this is part of how he is training students to think of meditation and not just as like an attention exercise, but truly the Tibetan word for meditation, one of the Tibetan words for meditation is gom, G-O-M, which means getting used to, becoming familiar with, becoming used to, or becoming familiar with. And so when we think of meditation as being some kind of perfect performance we have to make, you know, we have to perfectly sit and we have to perfectly attend to the object and so forth and so on, it's all a little rigid and it makes us more tense. I remember my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, he used to say, you know, he didn't say it in exactly this way, but he said, you shouldn't press too hard on your mind. In other words, he said, you shouldn't, when you're meditating, don't hold your mind tightly or stiffly. He said, because if you do that, he said, you'll end up generating more thoughts than you would if you just allowed the mind to relax. And so Mingyur Rinpoche's approach here sounds like it's a really good thing for us to place our attention, then let up on the attention, and then place the attention, and then let up on the attention, and then place the attention and let up on the attention, because that prevents us from over-focusing. Because when we over-focus, we create more thoughts, which can be problematic, because a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that meditation is like having no thoughts. Or some people tell me, I can't clear my mind of thoughts. There's no way I can meditate because I can't clear my mind. But the point is, we're in his description, we're not trying to clear the mind. We're actually allowing the mind to be natural, observing what it does, as though we were a dispassionate third-party observer. When we allow the attention to rest on things in this light, non-conceptual way, because remember, on one of the pages, he says, you don't tell yourself a story about what you're seeing. You just remain in awareness of the presence of the object. He said, but your attention will wander away. And do you remember how he said that when your attention wanders away, it's actually not a bad thing? And we'll get to that in a second, but he says that you first start noticing this when you are using this alternating attention. So he describes several different styles of object meditation. Attending to form is the first one. Attending to sound is the second one. Attending to physical experience is the next one. And then the one after that is to attending to your thoughts. Now, tonight, we'll only have enough time to cover attending to sound and possibly attending to physical sensations. But we'll work through those a little bit by little bit. And when he's talking about the attending to sound, he talks about this, about what to do when you have a wandering mind. So let's go to page 151, and it's under step 3, attending to sound. So what he's saying here, he says attending to sound is very similar to attending to form, except that you're engaging the faculty of hearing rather than the faculty of sight. He says, begin by taming your horse, meaning your body, through assuming whatever posture is convenient for your meditation posture. Then take a few moments to tame the rider, meaning your attention, by resting in objectless attention, simply opening your awareness to whatever is going on without attaching to anything specific. I use the example of watching a leaf float down from a tree or watching a twig carried away in a stream. When you're just observing these things going by, you're not telling yourself a story about the leaf that's coming down in the wind or the twig that's floating down by the river. You just let your attention rest. Then he says, then after this moment of being without an object, just resting and being aware, he says, then you become, you allow yourself to pay attention. And I love the way he uses the word allow, like you let yourself do it. Not that you force yourself to do it, but you let yourself do it. You allow yourself to pay attention to the sounds that are close to your awareness, such as your breath or external sounds like rain, because I actually have rain pattering against the window right now at my place. And, or the noise of a television coming from the neighbor's apartment, or an airplane or cars passing by, and so forth. He said, there's no need to try to identify these sounds, nor is it necessary to tune in specifically to a specific sound. In fact, it's easier to let yourself be aware of everything you hear. The point is to cultivate a simple, bare awareness of sound as it strikes your ear. Like visual objects, sounds serve merely as an object that allows the mind to rest. So I'd like for you to try this right now in where you are sitting tonight. We'll do a little example. First, we'll place our body in our meditation posture. And then noticing our posture, we relax into it. And then we can start by resting in what he calls objectless awareness. Just letting the mind be aware of its natural awareness. We'll do this for a moment. Next, we'll allow our attention to drift to a sound. As I say, I have rain pattering against my window, but maybe you have the sound of a little fan somewhere, or maybe just the quiet of your neighborhood. Just allow your attention, your awareness to rest on the sound. And we'll do that for a moment or two. Next, we shift our approach and allow the mind to rest in this objectless awareness. Being aware of thoughts, feelings, everything. So that's a really brief meditation on sound, starting with objectless attention, going through attention to sound, and then back to objectless attention again. And this can be done off and on through the practice. There's something he says in here. It's on page 152 where he talks about he says, as with about drifting, where your attention drifts away from the object of your meditation and what to do when that happens. He said, as with the form meditation, the previous one we learned, he says, you'll probably find that you can focus on the sounds around you for only a few seconds at a time before your mind or attention wanders off. He said, that's not uncommon and is actually great. Now, this is the first time I've heard this approach, and I love it. He said that wandering serves as a kind of cue, like flopping over on your meditation cushion, that you have become too loose or too relaxed. He was describing earlier a sort of comical situation where someone was trying to sit in meditation on their cushion with relaxation, and they relaxed a little too much and fell off their cushion. So, but what he's saying here, this wandering is a cue that you've become too loose or too relaxed. And then he says, when you find your mind wandering, just bring yourself back to open attention, and then turn your attention back to sounds again. Allow yourself to alternate between resting attention on sounds and allowing your mind simply to rest in a relaxed state of open meditation. So I think we're going to try this again then, with this instruction about noticing and returning attention. So again, placing the body in a posture of comfortable meditation. Not too tight, not too loose. And then placing one's attention on what he calls objectless awareness. Just letting the mind relax into the experience of awareness. Then one turns one's attention to sound. It could be a natural sound, a sound outside, or it could be the breath. Remaining with attention to the sound. And finally, allowing one's attention to return to this objectless awareness. Hey, that's another little exercise in meditating with sound. So, what's your thoughts about this? Do you have questions or curiosities, or what do you think? Have you tried this method before?
You want to answer?
Yes, please.
um, I really like this one because my place is generally quiet, and so I was focusing on there's just one fan that was kind of going, which is kind of a repetitive, soft whirring.
Uh-huh.
Uh, but then when you said, like go into objectiveless, it was like almost like I could feel my mind like suddenly open up like real wide. And it almost felt like it was like moving to the left because there was the sound of a bird off to the left. And so I almost found that that sometimes the when I was focusing on the objective, then when I would try to go to the objectless, because the objectless uh, uh, would have um, uh, um, what am I'm trying to say? The focusing on the object got to be harder because sometimes these intermittent birds with different sounds would come up and then make you go back to to the object. so so it was
Yeah.
but it also like you weren't able to relax too much off the cushion in that aspect, you know. So it was kind of interesting.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing about that because I think that it just each individual person, I made the little mini sessions a little bit brief. You may need to have yours a little longer. But yeah, but it is really interesting, isn't it? And something that he says here in one of his descriptions, where um, he's just talking about what's happening, right? And I'm trying to figure out, see if I can remember where it was, but he talks about this, on and going from objectless awareness and so forth. That what it really does is it allows the idea of what we are seeing and the mind itself to sort of merge a bit. That really all there is the mind, right? So I thought that was really interesting. Well, thanks for sharing about that. Yeah, in fact, it's in the next paragraph. He talks about that. He says, one of the advantages of sound meditation lies in the capacity to assist us in gradually detaching from assigning meaning to the various sounds we hear. With practice, he said, we can learn to listen to what we hear without necessarily responding emotionally to the content. As we grow accustomed to paying bare attention to sound simply as sound, we will find ourselves able to listen to criticism without becoming angry or defensive, and be able to listen to praise without becoming overly proud or excited, which I think is really interesting. It's all just, sound moving through space. It's just, yeah, exactly. It's just sound waves, right? Yeah, I get it, right? And that's really interesting because part of the reason I feel that the objectless awareness is helpful, even though it is a little confusing. I know what you're talking about. It's a little bit like you hear the bird and then you're back with the bird and so forth and so on. But the idea is that when we are relaxing our mind in this way, we are also relaxing our judgment and we are relaxing our clamping down on things as being what they appear to be. The idea that concepts are really, they kind of keep us imprisoned, concepts and so forth. And if we can relax conceptuality even just a little bit, which is what's happening here, we can begin to experience things in a different way without the many, many layers of habit and memory and anger and attachment. So anyway, I thought that was kind of cool.
It is cool. I just think, as you were saying, if once you're doing it for a longer period of time, then I think you can do more of what he's talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, here we can just do these little demonstration,
Yeah.
practices, which are really by necessity shorter. So yeah, I think that there's more of a relaxation and a more of a natural coming and going as it comes in and goes out. So I mean, when I say comes in and goes out, meaning your attention ebbs and flows, the ebbing and flowing of your attention is what I'm trying to say. Other people have comments. Yes, Charles. Oh yeah, you'll probably have to unmute. Sorry.
So thank you, Lama Kathy. Let me ask more detail about this question of time. What do you suggest beginners learn about this technique? I mean, is that because this is fairly new to me in this format?
Right.
And do you think that beginners can move right into this? Is this a good teaching for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. This is also my first encounter with it. And so since it's not my first encounter with it, it was first taught by Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche as part of his Mahamudra class on the book Pointing Out the Dharmakaya. That's the first time he taught this. But that was and he did not say, "Oh, this is good for beginners." He didn't say that. But nobody asked him. However, what I will say is that Mingyur Rinpoche presents this technique to beginners, yes. But from our point of view, the way we've learned shamatha meditation, I think that this is sort of more of an adjunct to what we already learn, and I think that for now, I think it's really good just to stick with a very relaxed form of shamatha meditation teaching for beginners, where the only reason we're going through these is because we're studying the book, and studying the book means really not just studying part of the book, studying the whole book. And so we're becoming familiar with this approach. And but some beginners find it too diffuse. This is just what I've been told by people who've tried this. It's a little too diffuse. Their attention is a little too diffuse, and they can't really, there's almost too much space. But what I've noticed is that in the years I've been teaching meditation, I like the way we approach it because we allow the student to start with something easy, which is tracking the breath as it comes in and goes out, and that the main feature of our method is the gentleness with which we approach the practice, and the gentleness and non-judgment that we teach the student to have toward their own distraction. You see what I'm saying? For us, the spaciousness is added through this gentleness and non-judgment. Because a lot of people come to me saying, "I can't meditate." And I say, "Well, what's going on?" They say, "Well, I can't clear my mind." And I say, "Well, let's try." I said, "My teacher said that it's impossible to clear the mind. So why don't we try something different? Why don't we meditation maybe is not about clearing your mind. Maybe it's getting used to your mind and then seeing how you can be with your mind. You can be with your attention. And so let's do a little of this where we train our attention to be with the breath. And I tell them when I'm teaching them, I say, when you place your attention on the breath, it will stay there for a short time. But then you'll notice that your attention goes off into the past or off into the future. And what's important is what you do next. When you notice that you have become distracted, what you can do instead of getting angry or upset with yourself is to make note that you are now thinking. You can then let it go. You can let go of the thought and gently, 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 kindly, and so forth, bring your attention back to the breath and think of that return as a fresh start. So you see all the spaciousness that gets injected into the process by starting with a tether for the person's attention on the breath, but also this gentleness and a kindness with which they come back. Because most people, when they encounter this gentleness and kindness, it's unusual to them because they're used to meditation being sort of this heavy, tense, tight. I got to be perfect. I can't get distracted. But when it's taught that distraction is part of the process, and that gently returning is part of the process, I think that that's the next best thing to the way, I mean, it really is, for me, the next best way to teach a beginner, because trying to have the students rest in objectless awareness at the very beginning can be a little bit too much space for some people, and they prefer a little bit more of an anchor. So that's just my take on it. We're learning about it here because we're studying the approach, and so that's kind of where that's coming from. But I'm not sure. Did that address your question?
Yeah, that's a great answer. So let me move to the other end of the spectrum and ask, doesn't this seem, or is this the same experience that one has at the end of a visualization practice when the dissolution occurs at the very end and we merge our mind with the guru, that experience of openness? Is that it seems such a similar.
Yeah, it does seem similar, doesn't it? And I cannot say it is exactly the same because I feel that the devotion approach, I'm just reading about this right now, and I forgot where I read it because I'm studying several different books with people right now. And so sometimes I get them muddled up a bit. But I was just reading about the uniqueness of the devotional approach and how it's a little different. So I can't say it's exactly the same, but I can't say it's not. Because these are all training states in which the mind becomes non-conceptual. But the writer who was talking about the devotion approach says that there's a little something else going on with the devotional approach that's not present in other approaches. And so I'm embarrassed to say I have forgotten which of the books I was looking at for that one. But
thank
so
you.
I can't say it's the same.
Those are wonderful. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anybody else who has a question or curiosity on this?
I guess one last question would be the length, back to the duration. If we were going to do this for say a practice period, how long would you suggest we do it? And then how long might we rest on sound itself, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then the objectless awareness for that length of time? We're moving much quicker through the instruction right here because of the lack of time. But do you have a suggestion for the duration during
I'm
regular.
I'm looking to see what he says at the end of the chapter about this, and I don't see that he mentions time, but what I'm thinking, yeah, like he's talking about, just a few minutes at a time, really. I mean, at the very end of this chapter, when he's talking about emotions and so forth, he says, watch your emotions for maybe, rest your mind for a moment in objectless attention. Watch your emotions for maybe a minute. Rest your mind in objectless attention. So I do believe it should be natural. It should not be timed. And so I think that it should be organic and natural in this way, because everybody's approach to it is going to be somewhat different. So I would start with because what I think of this is, the way Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught this in his teaching on pointing out the Dharmakaya is somewhat different. And the way Situ Rinpoche taught this type of meditation in his teachings on Mahamudra is somewhat different. But I think that it would be, that this would not be something, I don't think I would teach this to beginners yet, because it's something that I'm not familiar enough with. I know how to teach it in the context of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's Mahamudra instruction, and I know how to teach it and from the point of view of Situ Rinpoche's Mahamudra instruction, but I don't know how to teach it from this point of view. So I would hesitate to say for sure, but I would say your mileage may vary, your and what might be long for you might be short for someone else, and that's not important. What's important is that you are truly present and sincerely engaged and relaxed, because I think the tightness is really what causes the trouble. And so I wish I could give you a time, but I can't.
No, that's great. Thank you.
I encourage, when people are doing breath awareness shamatha meditation, I tell them to start with, because we're working with an attention device of placing the attention on the breath and bringing it back. So if we're doing that, then a timed approach is useful, because it can tell you a couple of things, having a timed approach. If you're doing breath awareness shamatha, you could start with a short period of time, like 10 minutes, and just practice the shamatha with returning again and again and again when one wanders. And that's also natural, because you don't know. Some periods you might be more attentive on the breath, and some periods you might be wandering more. And sometimes your wandering will go on for quite a long time before you even notice it. But the idea is that no matter how long you've been wandering, you notice it, you touch it lightly with your attention, you label it thinking, you let it go, and then gently, gently, gently return your attention to the breath for a fresh start. Doesn't matter how much that happens. But what Rinpoche said over time is that when you're doing this breath awareness shamatha, as opposed to the objectless attention approach, if you're doing this breath awareness practice, he said that what you'll notice is that the time will naturally set itself. And this is really interesting, because he noted this. He said some people, when they first sit down to meditate, they can follow the breath very well and return very easily. But the longer they sit, the harder it gets for them to return their attention. And he said that person should sit for shorter periods of time, maybe more than once a day. Whereas he said there's another kind of meditator who, when they first sit down, it's a very big struggle to pull all the pieces together of the technique, and then to notice and be able to discard distraction takes quite a while. And he said that person actually needs to sit longer. They need to sit longer so that they can experience the ease of the practice. See, so Even Khenpo Rinpoche, who was taking this traditional approach, said that each person would be different. Some people are better at the beginning of the session. They have to sit for shorter periods. Some people are better at the end of the session. They have to sit for longer periods. But he agreed with the ninth Karmapa, who said you should always leave your meditation on good terms. Don't sit so long that you become frustrated. So I felt like this approach is really a good approach, just being able to leave off when you leave off. Anyway, so hopefully that's helpful.
I have a question, Lama Kathy.
Yes.
So is it best to set a timer, do you think? To set the meditation timers?
Well, here's my thought about it. As long as you can set it and forget it, yeah. Just don't watch.
Right.
Yeah, try not to watch, right? Just set it and then put it out of your mind and just go back, and start with something short, something, 10 minutes, something like that. And if you want to sit longer when the chime goes off, then just hit repeat. I mean, I don't know. Is that not helpful? I'm just trying to figure out where your question.
Because sometimes if I say, okay, I have some time, I need to get to work at a certain time, but I do want to do some sitting practice. So I'm going to set my timer. And it's funny the way sometimes my mind will be thinking about when that timer is going to go off. Or don't set the timer. Then sometimes my mind is, then I get distracted a little bit because I don't want to go too long or too
well
far.
Sure, because especially when it's an important situation where you have to go to work. So I'd say go ahead and set the timer, but do your best to just set it out of your mind. Once you set it, that you're going to be okay because it's going to go off, right?
Yeah.
And then when your attention goes to the timer, like, I wonder when it's going to go off, you just smile to yourself like, oh, there I go, that's cute.
Right.
And then just go back to the breath. That's kind of where I would go with it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Thank you.
But I mean, just be so gentle with yourself. It's like, oh, there's me. That's funny. Haha. And I'm adorable, and just that way. Because not setting it might make you feel good from one point of view, but then you'll be worried, a little anxious. You might be late for work. So you have to, it's a balance thing. And it's easier to set it and then smile to yourself when you start thinking about it. You're like, oh, that's cute. I'm thinking about the timer. That's cute. Then just go back. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. It helps.
Okay. Oh, okay. So was there another comment? Did I see another comment? Okay. All right. So we'll go back into the book for a moment. It's what's really interesting is the very next thing he does is tell, a little bit of a story. He loves to use stories to illustrate his points. And so then on page 152 and 153, he tells the story of this person who attended one of the programs at Sherabling Monastery in northern India, where he was teaching. And this Western person was saying that they are very, very sensitive to sound and they couldn't sleep because the dogs were barking all night. And that's because in India, the dogs have their own little society and they're busy doing it. And that a lot of it happens at night because they've got to defend against predators and they've got to talk about territory and who's in charge. And so there's a lot of dog talk all night. And so he couldn't sleep. And he said, I'm very, very sensitive to sound. So I tried closing my windows. I tried covering my ears. Nothing helped. What can I do? And then Mingyur Rinpoche said, I told him, I said, there's not much I can do. I can't kill the dogs. And I can't cure your sensitivity to sounds. And at that moment, he said the gong rang for puja and everybody went into the puja room where loud Tibetan instruments were being played, you know, the horns and the drums and the cymbals and the bells. And he looked, and the guy was sitting in the back of the room asleep in the midst of all this noise. And so at the end of the ceremony, we met at the door leading out of the temple. I asked him how it was possible that he could fall asleep during all that noise. And he thought about it, and he said, I guess it's because I didn't resist the sounds. They were just part of the puja. Ding, ding, light bulb moment. And then Mingyur Rinpoche said, well, maybe you were just tired after so many nights of not sleeping. Mingyur Rinpoche said, and then the man replied, no, I think I've just learned that my sensitivity to sound was kind of a story I kept telling myself, like an idea that got stuck in my head, perhaps when I was a child. So what are you going to do tonight? Mingyur Rinpoche asked him. He said, maybe I'll listen to the dogs and hear it as their kind of puja. The next day, isn't that a great story? The next day he came to the room and announced proudly that he had slept like a baby. I think, he said, that I may have lost my attachment to the idea that I am overly sensitive to sounds. Mingyur Rinpoche concludes this section by saying, I like this story because it demonstrates to the degree that we resist that, it demonstrates an important principle. And here was my point, the one I liked. He said, we're disturbed by sensations to the degree that we resist them. We're disturbed by sensations to the degree that we resist them, to the degree where we say that should not be happening. This should not be happening. So when we say this kind of thing, that we become disturbed. This young man, he said, after some practice, discovered that the sounds we hear are like the music of a universal puja, a celebration of our capacity to hear. And then, so I feel like there are so many stories that we tell ourselves about so many aspects of our lives. I am this kind of person. I am that kind of person. I need to have this kind of environment. I need to have that kind of environment. I need to have this. I need to have that, and so on. And it's really, really hard to break through sometimes. And all of this, it's like we tie ourselves up, you know, and have a very difficult time existing when we have so much going on. So then, so that is the end of his section on sound. The next section, he talks about physical experience. So it looks like we're only going to have enough time to start this part, but then we'll continue it next time. And let me make a note about that. Okay. So so for our get together in May, we'll start in the middle of this section. He says chances are that if you're reading this book, you live, so to speak, in a physical body. On some level, we tend to regard embodiment as something of a limitation. Wouldn't it be nice to just float freely without the constraints of physical needs and demands, without the demands of ignorance, desire, or aversion? But he said our embodied state is a blessing in disguise, fertile ground through which we may discover the possibilities of awareness, because again, that's his main topic, is teaching awareness and how to rest one's mind in objectless awareness. And then he says one way to access these possibilities is through paying attention to physical sensations, a process that may be most simply accessed through watching the breath. So see, here's where breath awareness meditation comes in his system. It comes in here. All you have to do is rest your attention lightly on the simple act of inhaling and exhaling. You can place your attention on the passage of air through your body or the sensation of air filling and exiting your lungs. By placing the attention on the breath, This is particularly useful when we catch ourselves feeling stressed or distracted. And I tell people this a lot, because when they're not meditating and they feel stressed, I ask them to return to their breathing for a moment and be with their breath for a moment. And he says, the simple act of drawing attention to your breath produces a state of calmness and awareness that allows you to step back from whatever problems you might be facing and respond to them more calmly and objectively. If you're overwhelmed by situations, events, vivid thoughts, or strong emotions, simply bring your attention to the simple sensation of breathing. No one will notice that you're meditating. They probably won't even pay attention to the fact that you're breathing at all. And so then he talks about the counting of breaths coming in and going out, which is what we learned from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche: in breath, out breath, mentally count 1, in breath, out breath, mentally count 2, and so forth. And he says, do this until you reach the number 21. Then start the process again from 1. I have to confess, I've never asked any of the Khenpos or Lamas why 21 was chosen. I think that it's one of those things where the number 7, it has some special connotations, but probably because of the solar days and the solar weeks and the solar months. But whatever the reason for the 21 choice is, it's a good way to train oneself. So that's something to talk about. Then he says, using breath as your anchor can be extended to other aspects of physical experience. And then he starts talking about the more difficult topic of chronic pain. And this touches something that I think I'd like to talk about a little more next time, because I know several people who are struggling with chronic pain, and I would like to spend a little time on this next time. But just the whole idea, he says, he says, a lot of people I've met live in constant physical pain, maybe as the result of an accident or a chronic illness. Understandably, the pain they experience makes it hard to concentrate on anything but the pain. But the pain itself can become a focal point that leads to a broader awareness of pain as an expression of the mind. And so I think that where he goes with this is that he said, he described his father's approach as he was coming to the end of his life and he had a lot of physical pain. His father would say, these experiences are neither good nor bad. They're just what's happening in the present moment. And, you know, I have to say that there have been times in my life where things have been going on, and I just say, and I have just said that it's just, this is what's happening right now. There's nothing I can do about this. It's what's happening right now. And after a while, it's not going to be happening anymore. And I don't know how I picked up this practice, but I think it was when I went into 3-year retreat and I was looking at this long, expanse of time ahead of me. And I decided that I wasn't going to think too much about the length of the time, but I was just going to be present for whatever was happening right then. I said, I'm going to be here for a while, and then later, some time from now, I won't be here anymore. And that's what happened when I was taking care of my elderly dad. It's like, yep, this is what I'm doing right now. I'm doing this right now, but later I'm not going to be doing this anymore. And I don't know why, but that helped me a lot. But I can't say that I truly understand why I did it, or if, but anyway, we can talk about that maybe the next time. So I know we're just about at the bottom of the time, but maybe if anybody has other comments or questions, and then we'll come back next time to this attention to physical experience.
I just had a quick question about the 21 when you were talking about the 21.
Yes.
Is the breathing as you take the breath in and out, is that considered one, or is it breathing in one and out two?
No, he says in this book, he teaches it in this book just now what I was reading. He teaches it the same way Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche teaches it, which is in breath, out breath, mentally count one, in breath, out breath, mentally count two, in breath, out breath, mentally count three, and so on. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking about that. It's always good to clarify. Always good to clarify.
Lama Kathy.
Yes, sir.
This was a good reminder for me. A long time ago, I lost my passport the day before I was to fly back from France. And I was in the airport the next morning, completely panicked that I had no passport. And sitting in the lobby waiting for the flight, I said, wait a minute, all I have is my mind. I can sit here however I want. I can be angry at the pickpocket. I can be scared that I won't get home. I can just sit here and just see what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a learning lesson for me that I had options.
See, I think that's brilliant. Was this before or after your exercise that you did for Khenpo Tsultrim Jamso? Remember, he had you recite something many times.
Oh, yeah.
Was it before or after that? I'm curious.
I think it was after.
You think it was after?
Yeah.
Can you remember the phrase? Because I've got it somewhere.
Yeah. My own happiness is just my own thoughts. My own suffering is just my own thoughts. Since I want to transcend joy and pain, I'll meditate on equality.
That's it. If you would do everybody a favor, write that down, because I feel
that's good.
I feel like that's if you could put that into chat tonight, or because I have to tell you, I am okay. Just so you know something, I'm nuts about history. I am truly a history nut, and you know something. Khenpo Tsultrim Jamso's people are reaching out right now to students for stories about individual teachings they received. If you wouldn't mind writing that down, I'll tell you where to send it. Okay, I don't have the address right now, but you can ping me on what you call it, and then explain what your experience was. The reason I'm saying this is because these moments, I mean, wow, right? Oh, thank you. You put it into chat. You're my hero. You're my hero, dude. Okay. Because, yeah, I'm copying that. Because I have a feeling that he may or may not have given this teaching to somebody else. He may not have. And which, so anyhow, I'm sorry I kind of jumped in your story there.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
But that's exactly it, isn't it? It's all of this is happening in our mind, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like he was such a brilliant being, and there's another teaching he gave, some of these other short teachings, and like one of them was may adverse conditions, oh shoot, I can't remember, arise as friends along the path. May adverse conditions actually bring us benefit. May we realize emptiness, the complete, I forgot that line. The complete freedom from like extremes, and coming to this knowledge, may we benefit sentient beings. I have to go and look it up now. But this was given individually to a member of Columbus KTC who wrote it down as a 4-line verse and kept it close to her, and then she gave it to a lot of other people, and then I've given it to a lot of other people.
Yeah, that was in an interview with him, and I said, I want something personal for me, like a mantra. He said that.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. I just, wow, right?
What was that one word, Daniel, that you had? You want to transcend something or other and pain?
Joy.
Joy and pain.
Oh, joy and pain. Okay. Because in the chat it said something.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. It was just a typo, but thanks for pointing that out, though. That's really good. This is how we help each other, right?
Lama Kathy, could it be the 21 Taras, maybe, or no?
I think a lot of these things are related, but I'm going to need to, who I could ask? Who'd be a good person to ask would be Khenpo Urgyen Tenzin, the astrologer.
Yeah.
He would, if there was numerology or astrology, he would know what was what.
Awesome.
And now I have to remember when I can't remember if when I was teaching, there was another one that I found that the people at Marpa Institute or whatever Khenpo Tsultrim students had never heard before, and that was his teaching on Chenrezig. They need to know when and where he gave it, and I don't know because it was given to me. And it's the one that goes where he gave a 4-line teaching on Chenrezig, where he said, oh no,
I know someone.
Emptiness has compassion for a heart. This is the real Chenrezig. The Chenrezig with the face and arms is just a mere appearance. Use your practice of the merely apparent Chenrezig to realize the true nature, the true Chenrezig. That's it. And they said it sounds like him, but they can't authenticate it because I couldn't tell them when he taught it. So still, but it's so cool, right? Sorry, I got off topic there. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and type that in.
Yes, please. We can recite it in our monthly Chenrezig practice.
Are you putting it in the chat, Lama Kathy?
I'm typing it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I just can't type that fast. Let's see. I'm going to put, this is the true Chenrezig. The Chenrezig with the face and arms is just a mere appearance. Use your practice of the merely apparent Chenrezig. Okay, it's close. The punctuation is wrong, but you'll get the idea. The punctuation and spelling isn't perfect, but you get the idea. And I mean, he's still living, but oh, and by the way, I found it looks like that he gave a unique teaching in Columbus, Ohio in 2005 that they don't have anywhere else, where he taught on the songs of enlightened women. So I'm so happy they're collecting all of these because when he was teaching and even now, he's just extraordinary. Well, oh my gosh, I ran you guys over time. Sorry. We should pause here and dedicate our merit. I appreciate everything you guys brought to this tonight. Wow, it was really good to see you. Yeah, it's like yay. Yeah, I know. It's like yay, Dharma. I'm just really happy you guys are holding this space open for each other and meeting and continuing and doing all these things for the benefit of beings. So we'll gather together all this merit, gather it all together, and dedicate it to all suffering beings. I'll say a short prayer in English. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing, from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. From the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Omani Peme Hung, everybody.
Thank you, Lama Kathy. See you next month.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Thank you.
See you next month.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Omani